second presentation for the first session is by Ms. Mehaq Zarak. She holds an LL.B. honours from the University of London and an LL.M. from the Queen Mary University School of Law. The title of her presentation is A Critical Analysis of Pakistan's Approach to Child Protection Law and Policy. Ms. Mehaq,
hello everyone. I would like to start by thanking Pakistan College of Law for actually holding the symposium and inviting us to speak. I will be talking about the critical analysis of Pakistan's approach to child protection and their obligation under Article 19 of the UNCRC. So basically, it is protection against abuse of all kinds, such as physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse, and socio-economic abuse as well, such as child labor. However, due to time constraints, we will be just focusing on sexual abuse, even though the paper covers all of them. Along with Article 19, we will be talking about Article 34 as well, briefly, since that is the right against sexual abuse. Moving on, to start off, we shall be looking at what child protection policy entails under Article 19 and how it ties up with today's theme of crimes against dignity. The fundamental basis that the UN Declaration of Human Rights and consequently the UNCRC is based on is the inherent dignity and the equal and absolute rights that are afforded to the whole of the human race. And this includes child and children as well. That is basically the preamble of the UNCRC, which basically tells us about human rights and the dignity of the human beings, and we will be specifically focusing on children. And moving on, Article 19 basically Article 19 of the UNCRC basically outlines the state's obligation to prevent children from all forms of violence, neglect, and exploitation within the family environment and without the family environment as well. However, we have to realize that in Pakistan, the public sphere and the private sphere are very separate. There is minimum state intervention when it comes to family. In Pakistan, they do not think that the parents themselves can abuse the children. And therefore, there are no laws or regulations in order to prevent that. Moving on, it also puts an obligation that is not only to protect the children from abuse, but also to prevent it and to anticipate it, and to give legislative, administrative, and socio-educational measures in order to curb these atrocities of sexual abuse or all other forms of violence. Basically, it is really funny that we are afforded rights of not being hit or beaten up that in criminal law have been termed as assault and battery. However, children usually, until recently, were punished by being hit. Throughout history and across cultures and society, children are not afforded the same safeguards that we as adults actually enjoy. And why is that so? The concept of childhood and children having separate identity from parents or having rights are all social constructs and are actually very recent. Airy states that before the 16th century, childhood did not exist. However, in Islam, the rights of the child have been provided since the time of the Prophet. Evolving attitudes throughout history and across societies tell us that what is the society's attitude towards children. Now we will be looking at Pakistan's situation. In 2012, survey showed that there are 80 million children in Pakistan. that is 80 million individuals with rights and who have the right to be protected, and it is the state's obligation. However, there is no child protection system in Pakistan. There is no systematic, comprehensive system in Pakistan to actually protect the children. And what is a child protection system? Basically, it has structures and it has functions that not only respond to incidents of child abuse, but also help anticipate and prevent them. Usually, these are thousands of lawyers, doctors, social workers, teachers, judges, civil servants, etc., that come together to make this whole system that shares information with each other in order to anticipate and protect against abuse. In the Western societies, it exists. In Western societies, children, even if they're abused at home, they are taken away and put into the care of the state. In Pakistan, due to minimum intervention, that does not happen. In Pakistan, due to lack of infrastructure, lack of funding, children are not protected to that extent. Do we have legislations? Yes, we will be looking at them. But what are the factors that affect the attitudes of Pakistani society and the legislature? So the various factors are basically our colonial past, culture and religion, the 18th Amendment, and economic causes. We'll be moving firstly from the colonial past. Most of the laws that affect children are there since the time of the colonial era. Our criminal law was laid down in 1860s under the British colonial rule. But the objective at that time was to have law and order within society. It was not to provide justice or to provide rights to the people. So how can we see what has happened? Our criminal law is basically divided into cognizable offenses and non-cognizable offenses. How does it affect us practically? A practical illustration is that in 1999, when 100 or more children were killed by a serial killer in Lahore, it went unnoticed by the police until the serial killer informed the press and the police himself, which is extraordinary. But what was the excuse the police gave? That why could they not see what was happening? They said that under the Criminal Procedure Code, they could only register complaints if it was a cognizable offense. So therefore, they used the law to basically state that this is a reason we could not protect children. Moving on, as I have already mentioned, that the public sphere and the private sphere has a disconnect, right? This is also enhanced by our culture. The culture that we live in is a patriarchal organization which basically states that children and women come under the authority of the adult male within your society. What this does is it undermines the rights and the individuality of the children and women as well, but we're focusing on children. So how does this translate? It is something you see when it comes to the realm of child labor. Children as young as 5 have been put to work and they have no rights, and the kind of places they work, they are open to all kinds of abuse and exploitation. Next. Sorry. Yeah. Back. All right. So basically, it is thought that the father owning the child, this mindset is an Islamic recognition. That is not true. It is misunderstood. In Islam, children themselves are given separate rights and a right of a separate identity and a name since their birth. However, that same thing They say in our culture and society that the parents own the children, which is not true. It is not something which is an Islamic recognition. So academics state that when culture undermines that, they state that culture undermines laws and religion. And what is Pakistan? It is culturally Islamic. So they have adopted Islam according to their own wants or perception, not because that is what Sharia is. All right? Moving on to the 18th Amendment, another thing that affects laws which pertain to child protection. There are 78 laws, legislations, which mention children in Pakistan. However, only a handful of them are actually for child protection. And moreover, these handful which are actually for child protection, their implementation and enforcement is not possible due to lack of funds. We will be looking at the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Welfare Act and the Sindh Child Protection Policy 2011. Both of them are ineffective and both of them do not have any implementation because of lack of funds. Another flaw with these acts is that they fail to recognize that sexual abuse happens within the home as well. There are no ways to monitor how that happens. Moving on to sexual abuse. All right. Most cases in Pakistan on sexual abuse actually go unreported. This is due to our cultural phenomena of what will people say, the stigma that is attached to rape, and moreover, the definition, the very distorted definition of what we have of honor. Do I have to use this or is it fine? Sorry. So basically, child sexual abuse remains a very common issue, and in the first 6 months of 2018, in Lahore alone, there were 141 cases of sexual abuse and rape that were reported. We will be looking at the case study of Qasur 2015 and 2018, basically the Zainab Ansari case. So in January 2018, the rape and murder of 7-year-old Zainab Ansari led to nationwide outrage, and it led the government to promise action. The Supreme Court convicted Imran Ali for the murder and rape of Zainab and 8 other children. It seems that justice had been done. However, the police, it has been stated, could have actually prevented this from happening. In 2015, they were already informed that there was a whole gang of sexual abusers that operated within the Qasur area. However, the government had not taken any action. The government had not given any guidelines to the people who lived in Qasur that how could they protect their children, or that they were even aware of the threat that existed. Even after the 2015 scandal, which involved hundreds of little boys who had been sexually molested and videotaped and had been blackmailed either for money or for more sexual favors, basically they were promised an investigation and that the culprits will be brought to trial. However, it has not happened. Those people are still at large, still operating in the Qasur area, and there has been no justice. Furthermore, the Punjab Child Protection Policy 2006 has still not been approved, neither has it been enacted. And in relation to the Zainab Act, in March 2018, Zainab Alert Act was proposed. And basically this act deals with kidnapping, abduction and rape of children, And furthermore, it puts forth two demands. First is that establishment of an office to detect, alert, and rescue missing children, and furthermore to maintain a database so it helps with speedy investigation. And till date, it has not yet been passed either. Now we shall look at just general issues with our society when it comes to sexual abuse. The areas of Gilgit-Baltistan, the 25 tribal areas, and Balochistan do not have any child protection rights or policies. The KP Act does not recognize that child boys are also victims of rape and sodomy. However, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, it is a very prevalent practice which has been documented in the documentary called Pakistan's Hidden Shame. It emphasized that children would sell their bodies for as little as a piece of bread, and poverty was one of the reasons why it is so prevalent in KP. Furthermore, when it comes to research of any child protection area, may it be mental abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, child labor, anything, there is no data, there is no research. The last survey that the government of Pakistan did was in 1996. Until now, no other survey has taken place. Furthermore, there is a lack of sex education by the parents. They do not make their children be aware of their own bodies. And because they do not talk about it, it leaves the doors open for their children to be actually abused. Now we will be moving on to the recommendations, as we've already stated with the first recommendation. As I stated, the issue is lack of data. We need more research. We need more data pertaining to child protection. Secondly, we need a systematic child protection policy, and we need the funding of KP and Sindh Acts. The policies exist, the legislation exists. However, they are not functional. For 2 years, the KP Commission, Child Protection Commission, is redundant. It is shut down. UNICEF has withdrawn its support, and so have Save the Children, because they think that Pakistan's government has lack of commitment. Both of the budgets for both of these acts should be passed and it should be funded, so there are actually implementations of the laws that are actually present. Furthermore, we need across the board training for teachers and doctors and nurses, anyone who comes in contact with basically children. So the sexual, and if any one of them can recognize that the children are being physically or sexually abused, then they can inform the authorities and take appropriate steps. Furthermore, we need quality education for children. And I'm not saying education, I'm saying quality education, which actually makes a difference, which actually tells them that these are their rights and they are individuals and they can actually get their rights enforced. Moreover, connected to this point, the individuality of children has to be recognized. Children are not a part of their parents. Their parents do not control their children, even though they do in a way, but the rights have to be protected. It cannot be one interest versus the other. Children have absolute inherent rights that need to be protected. Furthermore, there should be centers for victims of child abuse and their families. Because it is such a taboo in our society, the victims, they suffer in shame and silence, and so does the families. So in order for them to get over the trauma and to move on with their lives, we need centers with free psychological help to actually ensure that they can move on from what has happened. In conclusion, the aim of this presentation was to provide a critical analysis of Pakistan's obligation under Article 19 of the UNCRC, which makes it clear that children and young people have basic human rights to dignity, meaning that they should be protected from violence. However, as we have seen that in Pakistan, these rights are not upheld, and when it comes to implementing the policies, there is a lot of room for improvement, which should be one of the major goals of the government when they're moving forward. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Mehaq. We will now be opening the panel up for questions. So if anyone of you have questions, please raise your hand and you will be given an opportunity to ask those.